Hey guys, welcome to the Brown Paper Theology Podcast. I'm Will Wolf, and as ever, it is the mission of this podcast to inspire people to get into the foundational texts of our faith and hear what God is still saying through them. To do that today, we're going to continue our exploration of the story of the Bible. We're going to wrap up the story of Abraham in today's episode and see how the Bible honestly preserves his failings, but highlights his ultimate victory and faithfulness in Genesis 22. I, for one, am very thankful for the honest portrayals preserved in the scriptures. I didn't mention this in the recording, but what's really awesome is that God chooses to view Abraham according to his best day, and his trust on that mountain is certainly a high point for him. Now, this is hugely significant for the New Testament writers and for us today. Guys, we all screw up, but God in his infinite grace chooses to view us based on our most faithful moments. And even more than that, he views us through the lens of his eternally faithful Son. But let's not get ahead of ourselves here. We're going to stick to Abraham for now. And with that said, let's get into the episode. All right, guys, welcome back to class. Welcome for the first time to class. Hope you guys are all doing awesome and super well. You guys know me. I have a tendency to blast forward. So before we actually get into the subject matter for today, let's open up with a word of prayer, and then we'll go forward. Lord, we thank you so much for today. Thank you for this amazing group of people who are all have this desire to just get into your word, to be Bible nerds, Lord. That's awesome and it's wonderful. And so I pray that we would just understand what you're trying to say through this grand story. But Lord, this is not a class for just purely information. We're trying to know you, to get to know you better. And so as we go into your text, as we go into your word, I pray that we would just hear your voice and that you would be glorified and lifted up. Jesus, we thank you that this whole story is leading to you. So we can read it with hope, knowing that you've already fulfilled it and that we have a purpose in you. And so Jesus, again, would you just be here? You promised that where 2 or 3 are gathered in your name. You're right here in the middle. And so you're here with us right now. And so again, may your name just be glorified. Would you be with all of us? I pray for clarity and for peace, for direction. So we just thank you so much, Lord. Bless every single person here. Bless every person who hears this. We just praise you. So we just ask this in your holy and precious name. Amen. All right, so welcome back, everybody, again. So we have already been through about half of the book of Genesis. We're going to be picking up for the rest of the story of Abraham. We left off last time. We just finished chapter 19, which was the whole weird story of Sodom and Gomorrah with the flood of fire, and then Lot with his daughters in the cave. Really awful, disgusting, weird stuff. And so we're going to pick up the story of Abraham and and finish it today. But before we do that, it's been a little while, so let's just do a quick summary of the story so far. All right, so the book of Genesis, the entire biblical story opens up with God's plan to unify heaven and earth totally and completely. And amazingly, he invites humanity in on that project with him. He calls humanity his image, his representatives on the land, and he calls them forth to embody his rule over the land, the sea, and the sky. Amazingly. And so that's a wonderful plan. It's beautiful. And Genesis 1 opens up with the picture of the total overlap of heaven and earth, where they're completely one and completely unified. All of the cosmic structure is God's temple. And it's a beautiful picture. And we're supposed to think, man, that would be awesome if we got to that point. And then Genesis 2 opens up with this second account. And it's kind of like, all right, if Genesis 1 is what everything should be, Genesis 2 is kind of like, all right, are we going to get there? Or what's the starting point? How does this whole thing going to go? And so while Genesis 1 depicts the entire overlap, Genesis 2 depicts just a little localized overlap. So Genesis 1 is like this, heaven and earth completely unified, completely whole. Genesis 2 is this, where this space is the garden. Do you guys remember this? Is this going back to mine? So if we're supposed to get from here to here, something has to happen. And humanity, human beings, have to actually be functional humans. So there's a difference between biological humans and functional human beings. The Bible is really interested in what humans are here for. It's a function. And like I said, we're meant to embody God's rule. And so they need to spread the confines of the garden. That's kind of the hope. But in order to do that, they need to trust God and trust in his timing. Because in order to rule, we need God's life, we need to be unified to him, but we also need God's wisdom. And there's those 2 trees in the garden. where they're allowed to freely eat from God's life, but the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, Tov and Ra, it's kind of off limits for the time being. And the whole thing is, are you going to trust God to give you the wisdom that you need, or are you going to take the wisdom for yourself? And so we see the first narrative humans in the story. They see what's good in their own eyes. They take the fruit and they eat. And then the whole project, this whole thing just ricochets off. And they're exiled out of the garden. And there's all these promises that God makes. Promises, yes, but also the consequences of their actions. The relational unity that they experience with one another that's going to be broken. The unity that they share with God, that's going to be broken. And the relationship with creation itself is also broken. And as Paul says, creation is groaning, waiting for the children of God to be revealed. It's like God wants to take this good world somewhere, and he wants humans in on that project with him. But until humans are actually humans, until we're actually functional human beings, it's like it's waiting to go somewhere. But the most important promise that God makes is that there will be one person, one human, the seed of the woman, who's going to come and crush the head of that serpent, the embodiment of chaos and death that channeled death into God's good world. There's going to be one person who's going to come and crush the head of that serpent, but also be crushed in the meantime. And so the rest of the biblical story, we're waiting to try to see who is that one going to be? Who is this person coming? And every new character we meet, we have to ask, is this the one? Is this the one? Is this the one? And what we're going to end up seeing is that the one, like every character we meet, kind of fills in a little bit of the picture, a little bit of the shadow, a little bit of the silhouette, which, guys, spoiler alert, it's Jesus. Okay, just so you guys know. All right, so we'll get there, but we're not there yet. We're going to try to read the story as it's presented. We're longing, waiting for one person who's going to actually be human on our behalf, so we can be human in them. So the first person, after we meet two brothers, neither of them is the seed of the woman. Poor Abel, his name means vapor because he's here 1 minute and gone the next. He's there for like 2 sentences and then he's dead. So Cain's not the one, Abel's not the one. But we do see that in Cain and Abel, our choices, the choices that we make, determine if we're on the snake side or on the human side. And so it's not necessarily like a biological line is going to be the seed of the serpent. It's by our own choices we align ourselves with the serpent or with the seed of the woman. So Cain chooses to align himself with the serpent, murders his brother. He's exiled further than his parents were. He's out of Eden entirely. There he builds a city, and within that city, violence just explodes to the point of that one guy, Lamech, he's singing to his 2 wives about how he just killed a dude for slapping him. So the violence that we see in that city escalates until it's just everywhere. And God's looking upon his good world and he's lamenting. He's sad. He's deeply pained in his heart. He regrets that he made humanity, not because he hates us or hates his creation, but he hates what we've done to the place and what we're doing to the place. And so he says, I have to wipe it clean. I've got to wash it. And so he allows the cosmos to kind of collapse back in on itself. The waters above and the waters below, they come crashing back down. But what's amazing is that God picks one person in his family, a remnant, to survive through those waters so that then the whole project can kind of continue on. And that person is? Noah. Awesome. So Noach means rest. And so Noah, he's in this floating divine refuge, this Eden boat with his family and the animals, and it's wonderful. They're surviving on the chaos waters. And then they come to rest on a mountain. The waters recede. They get off the boat, and it's wonderful. It's cool. God's like, hey, I'm never going to do this ever again. Seed time and harvest, the seasons are going to persist, they're going to continue. There's cosmic permanence or persistence, and it's great. And it's like Genesis 1 all over again. And we're like, yeah, Noah's the guy. He's the dude. And it says, Noah planted a garden. It's like, yeah, man, let's do it. And then it says, but he drank from the fruit of his garden, and he got drunk, and he ended up naked in his tent. And it's like, great. Dang it. He's not the guy either. Whole weird stuff that happens with his son and his mom and Canaan and all this stuff. You guys can go back, listen. It's weird. But again, obviously Noah's not the guy. And then from Noah we have these 3 sons, and we get from these 3 sons all the nations of the earth that we're going to meet. And when we see nations against nations, we have to sort of go back in the story and say, okay, which brother is against which brother right now? Is it Shem and Japheth who are fighting? Is it Ham and Shem? And so that's just how the biblical authors sort of arrange those stories. And then from that, we get all the table of nations, yes. We go back and we get this little backwards reflection on the story of Babel. So all the nations have these different languages. They spread out, and it's like, how did that happen? We learn that humanity decided as a unified whole to move to the east and try to unite heaven and earth on their own terms in the Tower of Babel. And so God says that can't happen. I don't want this destructive unity where you guys are trying to unify heaven and earth on your own terms to make your own name great. That's not going to happen. I'm going to spread you out. And so he scatters them. And then from that scattering, he picks one man. This is a consistent theme. He picks one dude, this really old guy and his really old wife who've never been able to have children. And now we're sort of caught up. So he calls Abram forth, and he says, hey, man, I'm going to bless you. You're going to be a blessing to the nations. I'm going to bless those who bless you. I'm going to curse those who curse you. And then through you, all the nations of the earth will be blessed. God's goal, his desire and his plan is all the nations, but he's going to pick one guy to do it. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Because if there's going to be one human, that one human has, like, just from a biological standpoint, that one human has to come from a single line. And so God's narrowing his scope. He's narrowing his scope. He's narrowing his scope. And so we are kind of at this narrowing standpoint here. So we have like Adam and Eve, they're here. And then we have all the nations. And then from the nations, he's going to pick one guy. And then from that one guy, one son, and then from that guy, like a family, and then from that family, a single tribe, and then from that single tribe, a single line, the line of David, and then eventually, at this point, we're going to get Jesus. And so the whole story is focused in on Jesus, the blessing, the promise, everything, and then when Jesus does what he does, it can then explode back out to the nations. And this is the New Testament, but we're right here, we're at this point. We're going to get here, not quite there yet. Okay. Everybody following so far? Everybody good? All right. So let's briefly, famous last words, go over the story of Abraham so far. All right, so in 12 through 14, and remember, Abraham's story is arranged in a specific way. It's these like blocks, and they're designed in blocks to teach us how to read these stories, to compare and contrast, sort of join points, because some things are confusing in like stories later on, but it's like, okay, if I read it in light of this, I understand what's happening, all that stuff. So we have 12 through 14, 15 through 17, 18 through 19, and then the last block is like 20, 21, it's kind of shared, but then 22. So this last block is patterned off of the blocks above. Do you guys remember that? Does that make any sense? Okay. So when we read these chapters, we're going to hear things that have already happened before. We're going to be like, that sounds so familiar. That's intentional. That's the point. So last time for Abraham, we went over these 3 blocks. So 12 through 14 is about God's calling forth of Abraham. He goes to the land of Canaan. As soon as he's there, there's a famine. He goes to Egypt, and it's like, dude, you didn't listen to God. And then in Egypt, Abraham acts like the snake. He gives his own wife because he's like, if they know how beautiful you are, they're going to kill me. So you know what? Just take the fall for me. That sounds like a great idea. So he's not the best husband in the world. He's then rewarded and blessed like by Pharaoh for that. So he walks out of Egypt with all these possessions, with donkeys and livestock and male and female servants. And I wonder if a female servant is going to be significant later on in the story. We'll just have to wait and see. And then after that, we see Abraham, he goes back to the land, and then there's this big battle that happens with those 9 kings against each other, and Abraham Abram at this point, he comes out on top. Lot gets taken, his nephew, and then Abram and 318 of fighting men, they just like blast apart the kings, and it's a really awesome story. It's cool. And so at the end of this, we sort of have a whole cycle. We've played through the melody of Genesis. We've had a Genesis 1 and 2 thing with this new humanity. Abram's called forth, a failure in Egypt. And then the flood that happens with this battle against these kings. And then we start the whole thing over again. It's like Abram's back to the Genesis 1 part. Then God and Abram make this covenant together where God, he promised him land, he promised him seed. And Abram's like, dude, I don't, like, how do I know you're going to give me this? And God says, you know what, just cut some animals in half. He knocks him out. God walks through the aisles himself to seal himself to himself for this covenant on behalf of Abram and his family, which is a high point, a highlight. But then remember, the whole thing is seed. And Sarai, who hasn't been able to conceive, she's really old, she says, you know what, Abram, just sleep with my female servant, and I will make a family through her. And so she takes Hagar, and gives to her husband. And it's like, dang it, guys, we're back at Genesis 3. We're right back at the tree where the wife or Eve took the fruit and gave it to her husband. Now we have Sarai taking this poor innocent woman and giving her to her husband. They conceive a child through that, which is not God's intention, not his plan. And so there's this sexual abuse and awful junk. And because of that, God's like, guys, why are you doing this? What's your problem? And so Genesis 17 starts with this thing where God's like, Abram, walk before me and be blameless, for goodness sake. Be who I've called you to be. And it's this reforging of the covenant, but it comes with this sort of divine mercy. And it's just like a severe judgment that also is a blessing guarantee at the same time. And so Abram just sexually abused this woman. And so God says, all right, the thing with which you just abused this woman, you have to cut a part of it off. And so we get circumcision. Circumcision acts as this decreation thing. It's like a flood of a cutting off, but it's also a recreation thing because Abram gets renamed to Abraham. The covenant is reestablished. God says, you're going to be the father of many nations. And so we get another restart. It's like, yeah, man, Abraham, we're starting back over. We get 18. We see this beautiful moment where Abraham's at the tent. Those three men come to him, and he's like rushing to try to get this food together. There's a tender and good calf, tov and rach. So we're like, oh man, it sounds like the garden again. He says, hey, Sarah, can you just make some bread? She doesn't make the bread because she doesn't even want to be with God anyway. You guys remember this? Am I going too fast? Okay. So it's cool. So like Abraham is on this Genesis 1 mountain peak awesome time. And then 19 follows the story of Lot. So Abraham intercedes on behalf of Sodom. He says, man, if there's just 10 righteous ones in this city, would you spare it? And God's like, I absolutely will. I'll spare it for the sake of 10. There's no one righteous in the city. As we see, Lot and his daughters, definitely not righteous, but they're spared on behalf of Abraham. So when we leave Abraham in chapter 18, he's like on the top of this mountain with a tent. Yikes. Needs to be more flat. There we go. Perfect. Yeah, thank you. And it's good. He's like, yes, we're in a good Genesis 1 state. Yay. So we should, knowing the story so far, should we expect that to last? No. So if we're in Genesis 1 and 2 so far, what comes next? What's next in the melody? Genesis 1, then Genesis 2. What comes after Genesis 2? Genesis 3. Okay. Yeah, Genesis 3 is the story of somebody back at the tree making this stupid decision. Okay? So we should expect to see a failure narrative happen in chapter 20. So with that being said, everyone turn to Genesis chapter 20, please. All right. Abraham and Abimelech. From there, Abraham journeyed toward the territory of the Negev and lived between Kadesh and Shur, and he sojourned in Gerar. And Abraham said of Sarah his wife, you know, she's my sister. And Abimelech, king of Gerar, sent and took Sarah. But God came to Abimelech in a dream by night and said to him, behold, you're dead because of the woman whom you have taken, for she is a man's wife. Now Abimelech had not approached her, so he said, Lord, will you kill an innocent people? Did he not say to me, she's my sister? And she herself said, he's my brother. In the integrity of my heart and the innocence of my hands I have done this. Then God said to him in the dream, yeah, I know you've done this in the integrity of your heart. And it was I who kept you from sinning against me. Therefore I did not let you touch her. Now then, return the man's wife, for he is a prophet, and he will pray for you, and you shall live. But if you do not return her, know that you shall surely die, you and all who are yours. So Abimelech rose early in the morning and called all his servants and told them all these things, and the men were very much afraid. Then Abimelech called Abraham and said to him, what is this you have done? And how have I sinned against you, that you have brought on me and my kingdom a great sin? You have done to me things that ought not to be done. And Abimelech said to Abraham, what did you see that you did this thing? Abraham said, well, I did it because I thought there's no fear of God at all in this place, and they'll kill me because of my wife. Besides, I'm not that wrong. She is indeed my sister, the daughter of my father, though not the daughter of my mother, and she became my wife. And when God caused me to wander from my father's house, I said to her, this is the kindness you must do me. At every place to which we come, say of me, he's my brother. Then Abimelech took sheep and oxen and male servants and female servants and gave them to Abraham, and returned Sarah his wife to him. And Abimelech said, behold, my land is before you, dwell where it pleases you. To Sarah he said, behold, I have given your brother 1,000 pieces of silver. It is a sign of your innocence in the eyes of all who are with you, and before everyone you are vindicated. Then Abraham prayed to God, and he healed Abimelech, and also healed his wife and female slaves so that they bore children. For the Lord had closed all the wombs of the house of Abimelech because of Sarah, Abraham's wife. All right, if we're looking earlier in the story, does that sound like anything that's happened before? Egypt, exactly. So Egypt was in which chapter? Do you remember? It's okay if you don't.
12 through 14?
It is in 12 through 14, specifically in 12. So I just want to read to you that portion. So Genesis 12, starting in verse 10. Now there was a famine in the land, so Abram went down to Egypt to sojourn there, for the famine was severe in the land. When he was about to enter Egypt, he said to Sarai his wife, I know that you're a woman beautiful of appearance. And when the Egyptians see you, they'll say, that's this guy's wife? Then they'll kill me, but they'll let you live. Say you are my sister, that it may go well with me because of you, and that my life may be spared for your sake. All right, so in chapter 20, we don't get that whole rationale. We're just said that Abraham tells Sarah, Abraham said to Sarah, what am I saying? Abraham said to Abimelech, she's my sister. That's all we're told. But we should know and remember the whole reason that Abraham did this was completely fear-based and completely selfish. And so what Abraham's doing is he's just replaying his own action. And so he's hanging his own wife out to dry for his own sake to try to just protect himself. He acts like the snake. He deceives this king, and he just lets it happen. He just lets the king take his wife. But importantly, for Abimelech, Abimelech doesn't sleep with her. He says, I didn't approach her. And God's like, I know you're innocent in this, and I'm telling you because I don't want you to sin against me. And at the end of the story, we realize that because of Abraham's choice, because of what he did, there's just this curse going on in the land of Gerar. There's closed wombs. No one's able to have children. And remember, what is Abraham called forth to do? What was this whole thing? What's God's whole plan for all the nations of the earth? Well, that's true, but to be blessed. And to be blessed through Abraham. But what Abraham does every time he meets another nation is he just brings curse on it. So Abraham's not doing what God has called him to do. He's called to bless, to bless, to bless. But his actions, they bring curse to the land. So we have Abraham, Sarah, to King. Oof. To King Abim. So there's a key phrase that we're supposed to hear and realize what this action is representing or replaying when King Abimelech asks Abraham, what is this you have done? It's the same question that God asked the humans in the garden. It's the same question that Pharaoh asks Abraham earlier in the story. This whole thing is a replay of the tree event. And so whenever we hear somebody ask, what is this you have done? We have to remember that, oh my goodness, this was an at the tree moment, and Abraham just failed. So Abraham acts like the snake. He deceives. Sarah is like the forbidden fruit, who's she's just innocent in the whole matter. Abimelech is kind of like the humans who are deceived by the snake, but then he's also acting like God, asking Abraham, what is this you have done? And so there's this whole weird dynamic analogy thing going on where different people are representing different roles, but the story is the same. The action is the same. It was an at the tree moment, and there was a failure.
Is this the second or third time that Abraham does the like his want of possession becomes too high because he denied it with the one guy. So is this the third time and he's failed twice?
So he's failed in this specific way twice, hanging his wife out to dry. He does have a weird relationship with possessions, where in Genesis 12 it's like he's blessed for it, and it's like that should make us feel uncomfortable. Even in this story, again, he's like seemingly blessed for his deception. Like he gets a bunch of stuff, even though he just like hung his wife out to dry, cursed this nation, and he like walks away feeling fine. But the whole story that's being told is what needs to happen to Abraham to teach him he needs to surrender, to break this desire, this relationship with his possessions that ultimately brings curse. And we're going to see that answered in Genesis 22. So we're going to get there. But to your question, this is the second time that this specific thing has happened. In chapter 14, after the battle, when that one king comes and he's like, give me everything, you took it all, or whatever. And then Abraham's like, I'm not going to take anything. I'm going to take what my men deserve, and I'm not going to take anything else, because I don't want anybody to be able to say, I made Abraham great, or I made Abram great. And so we have this like, that's like a picture of like, oh, that's who Abraham could be, where he has a healthy relationship with his possessions. But then we also see stuff like this, where it's like he's not quite, it's like it's there, the shred's there, but we're not quite there. We're not quite there, but we will get there. Did I answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. Yep. Okay, so, but we do see that Abraham, his prayer to God does result in blessing. And so his initial reactions, they result in curse on the land. But then when he prays to God, humbles himself, that then unlocks the blessing to the nations. Because it says, when Abraham prayed to God, God healed Abimelech, and also healed his wife and female slaves that they bore children, for the Lord had closed all the wombs of the house of Abimelech because of Sarah, Abram's wife. And that's not to say that like it was Sarah's fault. It was what happened with Sarah caused all this curse to come on to the people of Gerar because of Abraham's just terrible decision, terrible choice. All right, so we have gone through, we've gone through 1 and 2. This was our like Genesis 3 moment. What comes after Genesis 3?
4.
And, yeah, Genesis 4 and 5. So what are Genesis 4 and 5 about? Cain and Abel. Awesome. So it's this repetition of earlier failures that then results in the splitting of brothers. Okay? So we should think the whole point that we're going to see here is a splitting of the brothers, a splitting of the brothers, a splitting of the brothers because of some sort of repetition. So as we turn to chapter 21, we see, the birth of Isaac. Anybody remember what Isaac means? Laughter, right, exactly. And why is he named Laughter?
Because she was.
Yeah, okay, that's true. She was old, but their age causes them to laugh in God, like in the face of God's promise. And so Abraham laughs, and God's like, all right, your kid's name's going to be Laughter then, because every time you look at him, you're going to remember you didn't trust me. And then the same thing in Genesis 18, in the tent, Sarah stays back, and when God promises, hey, around this time next year, you're going to have a son, Sarah laughs, and God's like, why'd you laugh, Sarah? She's like, I didn't laugh. And he says, you did. You did. So every time they look at this child, they're going to remember that this was promised to them, and they didn't believe God. So laughter, for us, is a joyful thing. But in this story, it's kind of like a bad thing. It's like a symbol of distrust. It's like, ha ha ha, okay, sure. Right. Like that kind of laughter. But it's also really joyful that they have a son. Like that's amazing too. Okay, so the Lord visited Sarah as he had said, and the Lord did to Sarah as he had promised. And Sarah conceived and bore Abraham a son in his old age at the time of which God had spoken to him. So we're kind of like flashing back to 18 where he says about this time next year, you're going to have a son. Abraham called the name of his son who was born to him, whom Sarah bore him, Yitzhak. And Abraham circumcised his son Yitzhak when he was 8 days old, as God had commanded him. That's Genesis 17. Now Abraham was 100 years old when his son Isaac was born to him, and Sarah was like 90. Sarah said, God has made laughter for me. Everyone who hears will laugh over me. And she said, Who Who on earth would have said to Abraham that Sarah would nurse children? Yet I have borne him a son in his old age. Do you guys hear the irony of that statement? Whoever would say that to Abraham that Sarah would nurse children? Who said that? Who's been saying that this entire story since the very beginning? Who?
God.
Oh, who on earth would say such a thing? Oh, the creator of the heavens and the earth? Right. Yeah, so the it's like Sarah to the end is like not even hearing any promise that's been made up to this point. Who would have said? God said, okay? God said. So it's that sort of laughter thing. It's still like they're still incredulous. And I don't remember if I talked to you guys about this. The reason that that God wanted to do it in this way is for the same reason that Abraham said in Genesis 14, like I can't allow anybody to say, I made Abraham rich or I made Abram rich. And so what God is saying is that the whole family of Israel only is here because of my power. You guys cannot look back in your history and say, we're here because of our own strength, because of what we did. God is the reason that this nation exists. And they can never go back in their story and say, we're here because of something that we did. And so God chooses to use the most unlikely people, a ridiculously old couple who've never been able to have children. And it's purely from his Spirit's power opening up the womb of this, opening up like the dead, lifeless womb to pour in new creation so that this nation could exist and then bless all the families of the earth. Okay. All right. And the child grew and was weaned, and Abraham made a great feast on the day that Isaac was weaned. But Sarah saw the son of Hagar the Egyptian. What's his name again? Do you guys remember? What? Ishmael. Okay, good. Do you remember what that means? My God hears. So she said to Abraham, cast out the slave woman with her son, for the son of the slave woman shall not be heir with my son Isaac. Let me just go back. Hang on. Let me make sure that. Yeah. Ishmael. Yeah. Hang on. Sorry. Yes. All right. Okay. So we have these two sons, and remember, Ishmael was born when Abraham was 86. Okay. He's 100 right now, and so there's like a 13-year age gap between Isaac and Ishmael. Okay. So Sarah saw the son of Hagar the Egyptian, Ishmael, who she born to Abraham. It says laughing. Does anybody have a different translation in theirs? It says 21 verse 9.
Mocking.
Okay, mocking.
Mocking.
Mocking. Anything else?
Mine just says he
Mine
does.
says mocking.
Okay. The Hebrew is just making laughter. So it's like, it's not really clear what he's doing. Like, is he mocking? Is he making other people laugh? Is he like mocking Sarah and Isaac for like their existence? It's not super clear. So it's a little bit of a confusing thing.
New King James is scoffing.
Okay, there you go. So scoffing. So it's just whatever is happening, Sarah is viewing it very negatively. And I think what it is Isaac was supposed to be the one that was causing laughter. Ishmael is causing laughter in some way. And so there's just like this weird jealousy thing going on. So Sarah's looking and she's like, no, that should be my son, like that kind of thing. So she said to Abraham, cast out this slave woman with her son, for the son of the slave woman shall not be heir with my son Isaac. And the thing was very displeasing to Abraham on account of his son. But God said to Abraham, don't be displeased because of the boy, because of your slave woman. Whatever Sarah tells you to do, do as she tells you. For through Isaac shall your offspring be named. And I will make a nation of the son of the slave woman also, because he's your offspring. So Abraham rose early in the morning and took bread and a bottle of water and gave it to Hagar, putting it on her shoulder, along with the child, and sent her away. And she departed and wandered in the wilderness of Beersheba. When the water in the skin was gone, as it would be, okay, it's not that much water, she put the child under one of the bushes. Then she went and sat down opposite him a good way off, about the distance of a bow shot, for she said, don't let me look on the death of this child. And as she sat opposite him, she lifted up her voice and wept, and God heard the voice of the boy. And the angel of God called to Hagar from heaven and said to her, what troubles you? Fear not, for God has heard the voice of the boy where he is. Up, lift up the boy, and hold him fast with your hand, for I will make him into a great nation. Then God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water. And she went and filled the skin with water and gave the boy a drink. And God was with the boy, and he grew up. And he lived in the wilderness and became an expert with the bow. He lived in the wilderness of Paran, and his mother took him a wife for him from the land of Egypt. All right, so number 4 and 5, it's all about the splitting apart of the brothers. Does anything like that happen in this story? Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. So we have Isaac and Ishmael. And we see them split. But it's this split because of this rivalry between Sarah and between Hagar. And so if you guys remember, this is all patterned after chapter 16. So when we go back to 16, as soon, the whole point, like Sarah's scheme, I guess, was to sort of make a child through Hagar, and then it would be like her child, which doesn't, I mean, that doesn't, first of all, make any sense. And then what happens is as soon as Isaac is born, and when she saw that she had conceived, she looked with contempt upon her mistress. And back in 16. And Sarai said to Abram, "May the wrong done to me be on you. I gave my servant to your embrace, and when she saw that she had conceived, she looked on me with contempt. May the Lord judge between you and me." So in an honor and shame culture, we talked about this last time, the woman who could conceive, it's like she effectively went up in the chain, like the ladder of command. She'd be like above Sarah at that point because she can have a child, Sarah can't. And so as soon as this happens, Sarah's like, "I'm back on top, baby." And like she just like despises this rivalry that's been stewing for 13 years. Every time she looks at this Ishmael, she's reminded, that's not my son. That's not my son. That's not my son. Even though it was her scheming that sort of caused this whole thing to happen. And so this rivalry comes to a head in this story. And as soon as her son's born, she's like, "You got to get rid of those guys. You got to get rid of them." And so Abraham is pretty bummed about that because, I mean, that is his son. That's his son. He's known him for 13 years. He's grown up with him. Like, he obviously has affection for this child, this lad. And he's not happy about it, but he sends him away. He has to give up one of his sons. But again, all of this is happening because of their terrible decision to begin with. So it's not like it's sad, obviously. Yes, it's sad. But this never should have even happened to begin with. And so it's like the consequences of their actions are now being revisited upon them. Abraham, back in the day, he should have just said, "No, I just had this amazing visionary experience with the creator of the universe who talked to me personally, and he promised me with a guarantee that we're going to have a son, Sarah." But as soon, like in chapter 16, Sarah's like, "You know what? You should just have sex with my female slave." He's like, "Psh, absolutely." Yeah, like absolutely. It's like, so it's like, dude, what the heck? Like all of this shouldn't have even been, it's terribly sad. It's horrifically sad, but it's all a result of their terrible decisions. And so it's this like visiting. And what's not awesome is that these two families just live in tension for the rest of like forever. When we see when we see Joseph, the Ishmaelites are going to come back up because they sort of take part in his being sold into slavery. Let me just get there. We'll get there. We'll get there eventually. It's fine. So I keep moving. So we have this splitting of the brothers. We have this horrible thing, but God is still faithful to Ishmael and to his mom. Like God still blesses them because he comes from Abraham, and he's not going to be the chosen one. Remember, it's through Isaac that the Messiah, the snake crusher, is going to come. But that doesn't mean that God has no blessing for any of the other nations. The biblical concept of election is not who's going to be saved and who's not going to be saved. That's not what it's about. It's just who's the Messiah going to come from? The Messiah is going to come through Isaac, but that doesn't mean that no one else in the story is going to experience God's blessing, because God wants to bless everybody. That's his goal. So we see that happen here. All right, so we have gone through Genesis 4 and 5, and then 21. It's kind of like I should have sorted like. Like that. It's kind of there. It's not a super clean. I'll get that later. Super clean break. But we go back to that guy Abimelech, and then who, remember, Abraham had bad. He cursed him, basically, his terrible decisions. Okay, so at that time, Abimelech and Phicol, that's an unfortunate name, the commander of his army, said to Abraham, God is with you in all that you do. Okay, so Phicol this is a king and his army commander coming to Abraham. How would that look to you? If you're Abraham and you see a really powerful king and a really powerful army commander coming toward you, what would you expect is about to happen? You're gonna get killed. Okay? So that's not what happens. What Abimelech says is, man, God's with you in all that you do. So therefore swear to me by God that you'll not deal falsely with me, or with my descendants, or with my posterity. Remember, like you just did like a couple sentences ago? But as I have dealt kindly with you, so you will deal with me and with the land you have sojourned. And Abraham said, I will swear. Now, when Abraham reproved Abimelech about a well of water that Abimelech's servants had seized, Abimelech said, I don't know who's done this thing. You didn't tell me. I've not even heard of it until today. So Abraham took sheep and oxen and gave them to Abimelech, and the two men made a covenant. Abraham set 7 ewe lambs of the flock apart, and Abimelech said to Abraham, what's the meaning of these 7 ewe lambs that you've set apart? He said, these 7 ewe lambs you will take from my hand, that this will be a witness for me that I dug this well. Therefore that place was called Beersheba, because there both of them swore an oath. So they made a covenant at Beersheba. Then Abimelech and Phicol, the commander of his army, rose up and returned to the land of the Philistines, and Abraham planted a tamarisk tree in Beersheba and called upon the name of the Lord, the everlasting God. And Abraham sojourned many days in the land of the Philistines. So that's a pretty beautiful picture. The way that blessing is going to be released out into the nations, we see it in Genesis 14, we see it here, is by a covenant relationship between someone who's non-chosen, that's not like any sort of salvific thing, it's just they're not the family of Israel, making a covenant with the family of Israel to sort of get in on the blessing. That's what we see in Genesis 21b. And I got to keep moving. I got to get to Genesis 22. So Genesis 22 is perhaps the most famous of the stories of Abraham. You guys know what it's about off the top of your head? Most famous one would be?
Gives up.
Yeah, exactly. So after these things, God, what is that word? Tested. Okay? God tested Abraham and said to him, Abraham. And he said, here I am. And he said, take your son, your only son Isaac, whom you love, and go to the land of Moriah, and offer him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains of which I shall tell you. That's
Quick question.
Yeah.
Why would he?
Yeah.
We might be thinking the same thing.
Go.
Why would he say your only son?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because he's got 2.
Yeah.
Does he not know that Hagar and Ishmael are okay?
Yeah, so it's a preference. It's a preferential thing.
Oh.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's
because this was the child that was promised by God
Exactly,
to him.
yeah,
That's
this
why
is
he's
like-
saying,
and that
take
does-
your one and only.
Yeah,
Okay.
and he's
okay,
not
fair
saying
enough.
because remember he says God's very aware of Ishmael's existence. Hey guys, Will coming at you from the future here. Now I just want to interject and clarify my answer. As I've thought of it after the class, I'm just not happy with my response to the question. So let this act as a little bit of a clarification. Now, when I say it's a preferential thing, I mean that in terms of like a status. Because Isaac is the one and only child of promise, that puts him on a different pedestal than Abraham's other children like Ishmael and his children with Keturah later. In light of Isaac's role and identity, it's almost as if those other children don't even exist. But what's important is that even though God labels Isaac in this way, so like implying that Abraham's other sons effectively don't even exist, God doesn't act according to that sentiment. Though he will bless and work through Isaac, that doesn't mean he won't bless Ishmael or anyone else for that matter. God is in the blessing business. He most certainly has a beautiful plan to come for Abraham's family through Isaac and through Jacob, but that doesn't come at the expense of blessing for everyone else. Now we'll explore that further when we get to the story of Jacob and Esau, but for now, let's get back to the episode. Because he says, I'm going to bless you because you're Abraham's offspring.
Okay.
But it's the preferential thing.
Sure.
Your one and only beloved
I
son.
get it. Okay.
And does Abraham know that Ishmael is okay? Like,
Uh,
does he have closure?
Ishmael doesn't really seem like or Abraham doesn't really seem like he cares. Because he gave him a loaf of bread and a bottle of water,
Okay.
and was like, go.
See you in peace.
Yeah, like that's all right.
Okay.
Thanks,
My
man.
wife said this is what happened.
Exactly.
Yikes.
All right, fair enough.
But for Hagar and Ishmael's sake, that's actually sort of a blessing because they're oppressed, they're enslaved. She was sexually abused. Like she needs to get away from there.
Of course.
Like
Yeah.
she needs to get away from it. Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's like it's a good thing that she left. It could have been a heck of a lot nicer for her, like if Abraham had been kind. But it was just like, nah, here's a loaf of bread and some water. Like, all right, thanks, dude. Yeah. So Abraham, what a guy. And that's the part of these stories that we have to read is that the Bible isn't preserving like these guys are all amazing and you need to follow everything that they do.
Right.
If anything, the biblical authors are really like damning of their origin story, which is cool because they're not trying to hide anything. It's like our history is so messy. All of our patriarchs were terrible people.
Well, they just made stupid. Sorry.
Yeah.
Stupid. I'm sorry.
Yeah, but that's the point. Is there? Yeah. I gotta put an E on it now.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I gotta put an E on it now. I'll edit that out. I'll edit that out.
Please do.
I'll put a beep. Okay. Yeah, so let's get back to it. Okay, so God tests. Remember, we're reading this. We're supposed to see this as a test, okay? We're seeing this as a test. And what tests do is they reveal the true nature, the true character of whatever is being tested. Okay, that's why we have tests at school, is to reveal our knowledge, who we really are. So God's trying to reveal the true reality of Abraham's character here. But it's intense. Hey, take your child and go kill him. Like, that's really intense. So Abraham rose early in the morning, saddled his donkey, and took 2 of his young men with him and his son Isaac, and he cut the wood for the burnt offering, and arose and went to the place of which God had told him. On the 3rd day, it's an important motif going forward, Abraham lifted up his eyes and saw the place from afar. Then Abraham said to his young men, "Stay here with the donkey. I and the boy will go over there and worship, and will come again to you." Okay, so Abraham's already got this. He's trying to like lie to these 2 kids, and he's like, "Hey man, I'm not doing anything shady here. It's not like I'm trying to go kill my son up on this mountain, like to try to like throw him off the scent." Or he's trusting, and he's saying, somehow God has promised me that this son, like something's going to happen through this son. And so he has asked me to give him to him, but I have to trust that there's going to be something that God does to reverse that, and we're going to return. Okay? Then Abraham took the wood of the burnt offering and laid it on his son Isaac, and he took in his hand the knife and the fire, and so they went both of them as one. Then Isaac said to his father Abraham, "My father." And he said, "Here I am, my son." He said, "Behold, the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for the burnt offering?" Abraham said, "God will provide for himself the lamb for the burnt offering, my son." And they both went of them together. When they came to the place of which God had told him, Abraham built the altar there and laid the wood in order and bound Isaac his son and laid him on the altar on top of the wood. Poor Isaac, he's probably freaking out right now. Then Abraham reached out his hand and took the knife to slaughter his son. But the angel of Yahweh called to him from heaven and said, "Abraham, Abraham!" And he said, "Here I am." He said, "Don't lay your hand on the boy or do anything to him, for now I know that you fear God, seeing you have not withheld your son, your only son, from me." And Abraham lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, behind him was a ram caught in a thicket by his horns. And Abraham went and took the ram and offered it as a burnt offering instead of his son. So Abraham called the name of the place, "The Lord will provide." As it is said to this day, "On the mountain of Yahweh it shall be provided." And the angel of Yahweh called to Abraham a second time from heaven and said, "By myself I have sworn, declares the Lord, because you have done this and have not withheld your son, your only son, I will surely bless you, and I will surely multiply your offspring as the stars of heaven and as the sand that is on the seashore. And your offspring shall possess the gate of his enemies. And in your offspring shall all the nations of the earth be blessed, because you have obeyed my voice." And so Abraham returned to his young men, and they arose and went together to Beersheba, and Abraham lived there. So, wow, what a scene. What a scene. Okay. So,
How old was Isaac when this all was taking place?
so the story doesn't really say.
Okay.
It just says after these things, God tested him. I'm trying to see what they call him. Yeah, so what am I saying? So in verse 5, it says, I and the boy. That term is like lad, and it's usually for like younger kids, but not like toddler kids, so like teens, like tweens.
Okay.
He's young. But it's just after these things. And so that makes it almost even, I mean, it's all heartbreaking, but like, again, Abraham has had this time to cultivate this relationship with his son. And then God says, you got to give him back to me now. Because remember, what have they been willing to do in order to get this son? They've been willing to lie, to cheat, to rape, to steal. Like they've been willing to do anything to get this son that God has promised them. And so God is again, he's like, dude, you have to learn to trust me. You have to. You have to learn to trust me. You have to learn to surrender. You have to learn to surrender. And so he asks him, you have to surrender your son. Like that's what I'm telling you to do. You spent all this time, you're willing to do whatever it takes to get this son, and now I'm offering it back. Are you going to trust me? Are you going to trust me? Are you going to trust me? And so when we pick up this story, in the melody, we've gone through Genesis 1 and 2, 3, 4, and 5. We're sort of here at this Genesis 6 event, which is all about the flood. It's all about decreation and recreation. It's all about tearing down so you can be built back up. And that's what this story is all about. It's tearing Abraham down. God has to like break him so that he can finally trust him, which is brutal, but it's also for Abraham's benefit. It's to teach him, like, you have to trust me. You have to learn how to surrender. And it's intense, and it is intense. And I'm not trying to like say it's not intense. It's intense, it's scary.
Extremely intense.
I don't want to do that. If God asked me, hey, kill James, I'd be like, no, please. Like, I don't want to have to do this. I don't want to have to do this. But Abraham trusts. Abraham trusts. And so there's like two things that are going on. Abraham has to be torn down. He has to be tested, revealed who he truly is. And there has to be this surrender that happens in order to, it's a further teaching. This whole story is not like, hey, Isaac needed to die, and so God's letting you kill a ram instead. That's not what this is about. It's a surrender needs to happen. And you're willing to surrender your son, which that's all I just needed to see you do that. I needed to know that you were actually willing and capable of listening to me. And so now I'm allowing you to sort of offer this up to me as a utter surrender. Remember what Noah did after he got on the ark? It was this thing that he wasn't even asked to do. He got off the ark and he offered a sacrifice, a surrender sacrifice. And so Abraham is depicted as doing the same thing here. He's like offering it to him and showing his devotion to God. It's like, okay, you have been faithful to me. I'm going to surrender to you and trust you. And then they go back down the mountain. So we have...
Good, Will. That's perfect.
There we go. Tangled.
Big fish earlier was my favorite.
Yeah, it's a Genesis 1 thing. So this story, it's this test, and it's the intense test that Abraham has to go through to teach him to just surrender. Because the whole thing, the whole thing that God just needs Abraham to do is just like, dude, please just be the person I've called you to be. I so desperately want to bless the nations because of you. You suck at doing that.
Is that
You-
a coffee cup?
No,
That's the ram's horns.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's ram's horns. It's ram's horns.
I get
Yeah.
it. I get it.
Yeah.
That's perfect.
Trying to make it a little PG after that. expletive earlier. So we have Abraham's like finally able to surrender. Now, what's important and interesting is that when God reiterates, he reiterates the promise, the covenant. He changes it from "and through you all the nations will be blessed," and now it's "through your offspring." So it's like Abraham is now taken off of the narrative stage, because it's like the promise isn't like the promise is now devolved onto his offspring, and so Abraham's kind of fulfilled his role, and as far as we know at this point, Abraham's in a good spot. He knows how to surrender, and he hopefully will make better decisions. In summary, he does not. So over the next 3 chapters, we see Sarah dies, which is not awesome, but Abraham buys a plot of land. It's the first piece in the promised land that he actually owns, and it's this cave, the cave of Machpelah, which means the cave of the naked pair. And so Sarah dies; she's buried there, and then before Isaac marries anyone else, Abraham tells his servant, "Hey, go back to Mesopotamia, get a wife from my people, for my son." They go. He grabs Rebecca.
Yeah.
Rebecca she's awesome. She acts like the new Abraham. She's super faithful. She says, "I'll go, I'll go, I'll go." And then in a comedy of errors, when Isaac and Rebecca meet, Isaac is peeing in a field. Rebecca falls off her camel. It's like, what the heck is this scene? This is really weird. They meet. Meet cute, I guess. They meet, and then they get married. Isaac's 40 at this time. And that's Genesis 24. And then Genesis 25 is all about Abraham marrying another wife. He's got 3 now. He has a whole bunch of sons. And instead of like blessing all his sons, what he does is he causes a further division to happen by giving everything to Isaac. So he's like, you're creating this environment where there's this hostility. And the story is ambivalent. It's not like, hey, and Abraham made a bad decision here. It just says Abraham's creating this environment. Remember, it was all about God blessing them with a son. That was what this story is framed by.
Right.
One son. And then through that, all the nations are going to be blessed. Abraham and Sarah they just don't trust that, and they're trying to make all these nations themselves, and it's causing this division, further strife, and all this stuff. And so when we get to, Abraham's done now, and we pick up the story again, we're going to follow a little bit after Isaac, but the true star of the next part of Israel, and I say star with sarcasm, is Jacob. It's Jacob. It's the heel grabber. So if Abraham is about the story of how is God going to bless when his chosen one acts like a snake at every turn, Jacob is how is God going to use this guy when he acts like a snake as soon as he's born. He comes out a snake, snatching at the heel. And so that's what we're going to get into in the next class. But for now, that was Abraham.
Awesome.
Good?
Good.
Any questions? Awesome. Sweet. Thanks, guys. All right, guys, that's it for this week. I just want to thank you for listening in, and I just want to say a blessing over you. So may God bless you as you go to wherever you're going next, home, to work, whatever. I just pray that you would feel and experience God's presence. All right, thank you guys so much.